Bill Cosby's stock sunk even lower this week with more women accusing him of sexual assault, colleges cutting their ties to him, and a former NBC employee telling the Today Show and New York's Daily News he sent thousands of dollars to Cosby's female pals and stood guard outside the comedian's dressing room. And there were apologies from some journalists who have written about Cosby. Joining us now from New York, Joe Concha, a columnist for Mediaite, and still with us in Washington, David Webb of Sirius XM Radio. Joe Concha. David Carr, in his New York Times column, recalls interviewing Cosby for the airline magazine Hemispheres, not asking him about the allegations, and he says, "My job as a journalist was to turn down that assignment. If I was not going to do the work to tell the truth about the guy, I should not have let him prattle on about his new book at the time." Your thoughts?
Kudos to David Carr, Howie, because he was under no pressure whatsoever to write the column he did on November 24th, dedicating 2,000 words to the top of it, basically saying, I'm wrong, I should have addressed this sooner. It wasn't done in a tweet and under 140 characters. It wasn't a throwaway line in some other column. David Carr said, I was wrong, and he was under no duress to do so whatsoever. No one was pressuring David Carr to write that column. And he even called out fellow writers as well, such as Mark Whitaker, and said, hey, guy, you're same boat as me. You should have covered this. And Whitaker wrote a biography about Cosby.
Let me get to it with David Webb.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I agree with you that Carr called himself out. No one was asking him to do it. And so former Newsweek editor Mark Whitaker, who wrote this bio of Cosby and basically stayed away from the sexual allegations, tweeted, I was wrong to not deal with the sexual assault charges against Cosby and pursue them more aggressively. So were these and other people just kind of Cosby's media enablers? Because these charges have been out there for many years.
Whether they did it deliberately or because, of course, America is what favorite dad and people saw Cliff Huxtable, not Bill Cosby.
Yes.
You do end up being the enabler, but it goes back to something we talked about earlier, Howard, which is media has a job to report the story, whether it's good or bad. And that's something we need to have back in journalism. We have too many people who will, they will ignore a part of a story that's uncomfortable. I say do the work, dig in and get it out there. And it's disheartening to me, but let's call it what it is. Report the story.
And Joe, with all of the media now piling on in a way perhaps that they should have earlier, has the collective power of the press sunk Cosby's career?
Yes, I think in the public opinion court, Howie, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective on this, with now 20 women coming about, we're seeing his legacy taken away one by one. TV Land pulling Cosby Show repeats. NBC pulling its contract for a new show. It's like what we saw with Joe Paterno pretty much at the end, where they took down statues and vacated wins, even though he only had the sin of omission. Cosby, basically, we're seeing it all go away.
Let me jump in because I also have been getting lots of email, David Webb, from people who say the media have unfairly convicted Cosby on the basis of old and unproven allegations.
They should tell the story. If there are civil suits, which is likely where we are now, we'll see that play out in court. But we can't ignore the statements made by the women. I say don't run with hyperbole, but deal with that. And by the way, Cosby now, as I'm looking here, according to the Root reporting that they're now offering refunds to his shows, including Tarrytown, New York, December 6th, something they weren't doing before. So I think they're getting the idea, and I think he's going quiet on this.
Right.